This week, I'm delighted to share a conversation with you that I had with my friend Jen Harrison. Jen's an amazing lady who's documented a 99% success rate in helping parents reduce their child's anxiety and anger-related issues in a matter of weeks. If you're a parent who's struggling with the challenges of a sensitive child, Jen shares what you need to know right now and what you haven't learned yet that will make all the difference. This is a must-listen episode. And let's face it, there's a sensitive child in all of us that we get to parent every single day. So there's pearls of wisdom for all of us here. We talk about the power of a parent's influence and how that influence never stops. You'll hear how a brave 8-year-old changed Jen's life and why what he said is a lesson for us all. And how a sensitive child makes sense of the world and the mistakes that get made when their meanings are missed. Also, how Jen helps parents look through a new lens and a lot more than that. So whether you're a struggling parent or are just figuring out how to manage your own sensitivity, in this episode, Jen will help you stop the self-blame, realize you're not alone, and point you to the tools and help you need. As ever, you can find the show notes and all the links mentioned in the interview at www.beabrillianthuman.com/141. So stay with me and let's dive into it. Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. If you're looking to improve your life, to heal, to grow and mature as an individual, but maybe you found that some of the personal development and consciousness stuff has given you the impression that you need to be super serious and vigilant to get anywhere meaningful, or feeling like maybe you're just not up to snuff. Well, this show is here to remind you of your humanity, and in fact that's where your true joy and brilliance lies. With over 25 years of experience in the transformation biz and having developed MPA, one of the world's simplest, pressure-free approaches to growth and well-being, if I do say so myself, I'll be sharing tips, steps, and insights that'll help you navigate all the aspects of life as a growth-seeking being. On this show, it comes to you with a good dose of humour, maybe a smattering of colourful language, a reminder not to take things so personally, and most importantly, to be kind to yourself along the way. Make sure you hit that follow button, and let's get into it. Hey Jen, good to see you.
Hello.
So folks, I've got Jen Harrison on the show. She's absolutely awesome. I've known her for over a year now? It must be over a year I've known
Yeah,
you.
I'd say so.
I'm going to read your bio out to give people a baseline background of where you're from. So Here we go. Jen Harrison, the bio.
The bio.
So Jen has coached almost 1,000 parents worldwide during the last 15 years. And in 99% of cases, I'm going to say that again, 99% of cases successfully help them improve their lives at home within a matter of weeks. We're going to talk about that. That is an amazing stat. She has a track record of helping parents reduce their children's anxiety and anger and any related symptoms or behaviors by 60 to 80%, loving these stats, without using any talkie therapy or medication. Now, she's featured in British magazines and parenting blogs as a parenting advice expert and has featured as an in-house coach for the online children's growth mindset company, Big Life Journal. Jen has been named, again, get this, folks, the child whisperer. I can love that. By mums worldwide, and has been highly rated by famous American actress L.A. Baker, who played Ellen in Will and Grace. Fame and fortune, hey? Jen is also a children's author and published the children's book Just As You Are in 2019. Jen is delighted to be able to offer parents around the world effective solutions and support from the comfort of their own home. Thank you, lockdown.
Yes, they just love that. Stay at home.
I love your bio, Jen, and I'm going to pick some points out.
Yeah.
I love that you put stats in. I'm a bit rubbish at stats with MPA and all that. It's like I've never really gathered the stats. I'd love to confidently say 99% of the time it works. Subjectively, in a very non-scientific way, I could sort of say that and feel good about it. It's like a random question to start with. How did you do that?
So especially when I'm working with parents privately, one of the tools that I use to help them help their child has evaluations in it. So I always say to a parent, I'm not just going to teach you something and then you go off and use it, and when we don't really know what change is happening, because actually here's the reality: when a parent is struggling with their child, even when change happens, they don't always notice it because they're so focused on this one big thing that might not yet have changed, that they've missed all these little things that have changed. So I actually use evaluations. We do an evaluation on the first consultation, and then we run another one 6 to 8 weeks down the line. And that is used as a tool of monitoring progress. So I kid you not, literally it must be 15 years now of using that specific technique with parents. There has only been, in my knowledge, and I've kept up to date with these parents, there's only been one family that it wasn't effective for.
Wow.
And it does sound too good to be true, but that has literally been my experience with it.
That's awesome. I have that experience as well. I call it the new normal. You work with a client and they sort of go, oh yeah, nothing much has changed. Well, tell me what's been going on.
Yeah.
And then they start to spew out these miracles. And you're like,
yeah,
did you notice that before you said this and that? Oh yeah.
I love
That's
that.
so much better.
Yeah, the new normal. Yeah, exactly. So so when I use these tools of monitoring progress, as you just said, Joel, I'm able to say, okay, so 8 weeks ago, you were saying, your daughter was waking up in the morning, screaming or refusing to put her clothes on for school. Oh yeah, no, she doesn't do that anymore. And it's just like things can start to change over a 6 to 8 week period. And isn't it amazing that we don't even notice the change sometimes is happening?
Yeah.
So if I didn't measure that change and run those evaluations, I probably wouldn't be sat here with statistics to share with you, because probably a lot of people would be saying nothing's really changed, when actually loads of things have changed.
Magic's happened and nothing's changed.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're talking about, because your expertise is, just to be clear, you don't, maybe you do, but as far as I understand it, you don't work with the kids directly. You work with the parents and help them to work with their kids, which makes sense to me in a way, because to a certain degree you can get interventions, and there are definitely times that helps to work with the kids themselves. But if you help a parent understand tools that we just don't get taught in our education system, to understand and support and help their children or their child, that's superpower. That's a life skill, right?
Yeah. And the thing is if nothing changes within the home environment, nothing really changes. I'm an advocate for therapy. By all means, send your child to a therapist or a counsellor. In many cases, that can be really helpful. But if you don't learn any tools or gain any knowledge about what's going on within your child's mind, and you're literally sending your child off to a therapist once a week, you have no understanding of what's going on within their mind, and your child spends every single day in their head. And so if you don't get an insight into what's going on in there, and you don't learn how to change the way that you approach them or the way that you speak to them, then your child will go off to a therapist or counsellor once a week. Maybe some change will happen within that session, and then they're just going to come back into the same environment that they were already in before. So I found for change to happen, something needs to change within the home environment. And also the other thing is that let's all think about our own parents. Like, even as grown adults, so many of us on some levels are still trying to freaking prove ourselves to our parents, or, you know, or get some approval from them. And so what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that parents are very influential on how we think, how we feel. And so if a parent holds that much influence, to me, it makes sense that you help the parent, because if the parent starts to think differently and speak differently, they are the people that hold the most influence over how a child thinks about themselves, about how the child sees the world around them. So if you can work with a parent, which is going to empower them and make them feel less stressed and happier in themselves, you know, completely lift a weight off their shoulders. If you can work with that person, then for me, they hold the most influence over how a child is going to grow up and think and feel in the future. So it's like powerful when you think about it that way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I used to, years and years ago, I used to work with kids, and I stopped it because I would feel almost like I was doing more harm than good, because I would work with the child. They'd go back into an environment which was not changed. Yes. And that could almost make things worse, because when we think about even in our own process, we have survival strategies for a reason. Not that it's about sort of the fault of the parent, because the parent is just, or the parents are just in a state of unawareness, unconsciousness around it, and they're following whatever patterns they've got that says just go fix my child, or whatever it is. But I would find that, you know, you'd help a child to overcome these, in a sense, survival strategies which were working in the environment they were in. And then they'd be more exposed without the changes happening. So I started to sort of make this dictate of like, well, if I'm going to see your child, I need to see you as well for a while. But I found that there were enough cases where the parent wasn't up for that seriously, that I thought, you know what, I'll leave this to somebody else like you. Who knows how to reach the right people, and it can put you all into that, because it is amazing. And that parental influence thing is stunning. It's like, it doesn't stop at childhood.
No,
it continues. I'm like, remember walking into like a DIY store when I was about 35, and I used to be dragged around DIY stores when I was a kid and hated it. And suddenly it was like, it felt like the most exciting place in the universe.
I can relate to that.
Because I'd kind of hit that point where the programming kicked in. At this age, you will begin to love DIY stores. I don't even do much DIY, but the idea of, you know, owning a drill suddenly became like mega exciting. You know, so it's, and then changes that I remember when my dad and mum split up, I was already an adult. But I think it gave me permission to leave my first marriage, which wasn't working. Whereas they'd always stayed together for the kids. They were together 31 years.
Yeah.
That was like, okay, let's, he sort of ended the relationship between them. So that we're kind of constantly looking up to our parents on an unconscious level. It's like that hereditary lineage thing is still happening. So it's fascinating.
Yes. I actually had a conversation with a parent the other day where she was actually exactly how you just said then, like comparing to what her parents had done. And it wasn't until and she was comparing herself and her parenting to what she'd experienced. And it wasn't until I pointed out to her, like, hang on a minute, you think your parent was handling everything and just getting on with it, and you think that you're, you know, the failure because you're struggling. But I said, let's just look at it, like, were they really handling everything, like the way that they were speaking to you, etc.? And the realization for this client was, oh, actually, no, they weren't really handling things. Actually, they were really stressed out. So I think we with parents can put them onto a pedestal, and the our view of them can be very skewed. And this is the same for children. So this for me is why it is so important that I would work with the parent, because just they hold so much influence, way more influence than I hold. And also, just to say, I have also worked with children. So years ago, I used to run like relaxation classes for children. I'd go into schools and I'd run my own like private classes. But one day this little boy came up to me at the end of the class, and I thought the class had gone quite well. And he came up to me and he basically said, like, this class doesn't work, like, I was like, oh, tell me more. Like, not really wanting to know more. Like, I thought that class had gone well. And he just broke down into tears and started to tell me how his mum was in bed at home, like struggling with anxiety, depression, which was, the theme that I got from our conversation was that she was really struggling. And he was probably about 8 or 9 years old. And, he stood in front of me saying, this class doesn't work, because what he was really saying was, your cute class where you come in every week, once a week, and try and teach us these relaxation skills, it's not going to cut it, because I've got a mum at home who's depressed, anxious, basically doesn't know how to help me and how this is impacting me at home as well. And this little kid was telling me that he wanted to walk out into the road. And of course, I chatted to school about that and made sure they were well aware of how he was feeling. But I went home and just sat down in my back garden and just like had to take a moment, because that was a really intense conversation. But it was a turning point for me, because it took me out of, I realized, oh, my classes where I'm trying to help the child, as you described earlier, they're not really going to cut it. I need to empower the parent and help them, because it's the parent that holds all the influence. So that was where my working with children days ended. And as you said, I would be open to working with a child. And there has been times when I've worked with a child occasionally, but it's always been when I've already worked with the parent for at least 6 to 12 months before I would even start talking to the child.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. What a soul that little boy was to come and, front an authority and to give you that revelation. What a moment. That's extraordinary.
That's so true.
So that changed your approach. So you're working with kids and you thought, right, as we talked about, need to work with parents, empower the parents and the environment to most support the child.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me wonder, so if that was your turning point, what really got you into this whole area of helping kids and families and parents?
Yeah. Personal experience, my own pain of being that child who, like, I'm 40 in a few weeks. So we're going back to the days when, parents didn't have access to the amount of information we have now, let's be honest. Like, it was more nip down to your local library and sift through a few books. And most parents wouldn't even be looking for those kind of books back then anyway. And there was no access to internet and all of that. And so as a child, I was a child who, now I know, looking back, I was a child who was very aware, very aware of other people's feelings. So I work with parents that have these kind of children that are very sensitive. And what I mean by that is they're very aware of other people's feelings. They're very empathic. They can be deep thinkers. They're just pretty switched on for their age. And so I was that kid, and it really felt like, looking back then, it literally felt like I was walking around in the dark. That's how I would describe it. Because it felt like all the adults around me didn't speak my language. And so I got to the point where, because no one had given me words for how I felt, or acknowledged that they understood how I felt, that I created my own language, in effect. I've never said it this way before. It's just coming to me now, but this is what happened. I created my own language. And what that language sounded like was, I don't feel well. I feel sick. I have a tummy ache. So I developed a fear of being sick. I constantly would say I didn't feel well. And then the school teacher would constantly be sending me down to the secretary's office. I still remember it. I would sit there and they'd give me a sick bucket just in case I was going to be, and I wasn't physically sick. I was trying to say, I don't feel good inside. I feel anxious. This school environment felt very tense to me. Like I was very aware of teacher stress, and when teachers would be very stressed or they would speak with a lot of anger, I was really aware of it. I would really pick up on their energy and their emotions. So it took me until early 30s until I really understood myself. And then, so I think when you have an experience like that, you just, there's a part of you that just wants to help other people, because I believe people that are helping other people on this level, you have to have gone through some kind of pain yourself to drive you to want to help other people with that. So that's where it originated from.
Yeah, it's a bit like the billionaire who came from the ghetto, isn't it? Really, it's
yeah.
It's the same principle, but just
like
helping people. I can totally relate to that background. I love that you just got that piece about creating your own language. I'm always fascinated by language. It's like without any education, you interpreted the sensations of difficult feelings as sickness because that's all you had.
Yes.
I wonder if you kind of got labeled back as a bit of a hypochondriac because of that.
Yes, I got, that's a really good point. I remember a music teacher saying, I'm not sure how this got back to me, but I remember a music teacher saying to my friend's parents, oh, she's just said something like, oh, she's just weak, or because she saw me, how I would say, I just need to take a moment, and she would interpret my language as like a weakness or a physical weakness, I think she meant as well. And it really wasn't. It was because the music teacher would slam a fist down on the piano when I made a wrong note with my flute. So I think my response was quite a normal response to feel quite tense in that environment. And then teachers would worry about the fact that I would say that I felt sick, and then for a period of time I didn't want to eat in school either, which was driven by a fear of being sick. And they would say to my parents, if she doesn't eat, she'll end up anorexic. And the head teacher would make me sit in his office and couldn't leave until I ate my lunch. And it was just a complete lack of awareness of what was really going on, because not one person back then had the awareness to say, I wonder if it's not really about the food. I wonder if she actually is feeling worried about something. And if someone had that awareness, that would have completely changed everything for me. So, I believe that was my path. Like, now I've been given the tools to work through that and work through the trauma that created, because these things create trauma for us. So I've been given the tools to work through that, so that now doesn't impact me. But you know what? There is still a part of me that still feels it, and when I talk about it, and I don't mind that, because that isn't impacting my life now. I see it for what it is, but it does help me feel passionate when I want to share this message and get it to the people that need to hear it. Because if I was just sat here like, well, it's just fine that all that happened. I don't think I'd be able to reach the people that could also really be helped by this message of what I experienced as a child.
Yeah, you can really see when you talk about it, the inspiration is like in that situation where the adults around you have no awareness. So now you're going to give the adults around the kids the awareness that will help them. And I think you're right that the generation, as you know, we grew up, there's a little bit of distance in age, but not too much.
Yes.
We're about to turn 40.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of our general generation grew up where there wasn't the awareness. And what I love is right now, we're probably with our generation, most of us growing up with the physical stuff kind of taken care of, but the emotional stuff not. We've kind of been inspired to do that, such that you do get parents who are now actively searching for those answers and recognizing that they are part of the equation. So I'd love to get into kind of, you know, what you do with the parents, and I want to sort of kind of mine you for some advice. Now, a lot of people who listen to this show, I'm going to guess some of you lovely listeners are parents with young kids. Some of you might have grandkids, and maybe your kids are having a tough time. But I always like to look the fact that we all have like an inner child, and mostly lessons that have anything to do with awareness are transferable. As in, you know, there's always something that we can take, even if it doesn't seem immediately obvious. So let's start with like your approach to working with parents. What are some of the things that, you know, the parents themselves say feel, or why do they come to you in the first place? What are they going through? And how do you approach helping them move forward?
Yeah, so when parents come to me, to be honest, I'm not always the first person they come to, and I get it. Normally you would go as a parent to the doctor, which obviously is always important if you have your child's looks like they're physically struggling, because back when I was a child, my mum took me to the doctor when I said I kept having tummy ache. There was nothing physically wrong with me though. So normally a parent would go to a doctor or a school counsellor or a therapist or a psychologist or a play therapist. So there's 5 places where a parent would typically go before they would come to somebody like me. I don't mean somebody like me, but me who's talking about this approach. I think normally the only reason a parent would come to me first is if they'd already had prior awareness, which maybe some of your listeners, it sounds like they would have this awareness, so maybe they might not go to 5 people before they would come to somebody like me. And typically when they get to me, they've been through many of these other people, and nothing really has changed. Because what I have found is, as we've already spoken about, nothing's really yet changed with the parents. Now, let me be clear what I mean by that. Every parent I work with is amazing. So I believe all of us are lovable. We're all amazing. None of us need fixing. There's just things we can learn to become happier and to grow as people. So these parents just haven't learned how to change their own inner dialogue and how to change their child's inner dialogue. And it's the inner dialogue that is creating these behaviors. And it's the inner dialogue that is creating how a child feels about themselves, and how they interact with the parent. So I always, if you look on my website, there's a funny video of me on the homepage wearing some coloured glasses. I haven't got them here with me today, but basically I'm talking about how a parent starts to see their child through this lens of, you know, you're starting to become a bit of a pain in the backside in this family. You're causing us all this hassle. we can't go on day trips without you feeling anxious. It's impacting all the other kids in the family. What's wrong with you? Parents starts to feel like they want to avoid their child because it's obviously understandably becoming really stressful. And what I do is give you a new pair of glasses and say, if you look through these glasses, you'll see what's really going on. And as same for me as a child, your child's trying to communicate with you, and they're doing it in the only way that they know how to. And if we work together and I can show you what they're trying to say and how they're not naughty, they're not trying to be bad, they're actually trying to talk to you. And if you then start to change how you view your child, firstly, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because when you start to understand what's going on for your child, your empathy will appear. Like you will start to think, oh, wow, actually, they're actually struggling. Like they're actually having a hard time. So my point of saying that parents normally go to like many other people before they come to me is to emphasize that typically the parents that come to me aren't parents that just are intrigued about learning this stuff. Now, I would love to meet parents like that because I believe every parent needs to learn this stuff. It's too important not to, quite honestly. But normally parents that come to me are parents of children who have got very high anger. So let's put that into context. Kids who are on the kitchen worktop having, a big emotional outburst, screaming and shouting at the family. Children 8-9 years old that won't sleep through the night, and it's causing a separation in mum and dad, literal separation, because the child is literally sleeping in the middle of mum and dad, which has a massive impact on their marriage. They're getting no time together at all. Children who have anxiety to the level where they will refuse to go to school, or they feel like they can't go to school, or they have OCD tendencies, just a whole range of things. But basically children that are really struggling, children that are in a whole heap of pain, and it's impacting the family big time. So normally it's quite urgent by the time parents get to me.
That makes sense. I see that as well in some of the clients that I see, that they've been through the systematic directive,
right,
which hasn't worked for them. It works for some people, clearly, but it hasn't worked for them. So they end up looking effectively privately, which is what we offer. So that makes a lot of sense. I do find it fascinating. It's like when you describe like the child up on the kitchen top having an absolute tantrum. A couple of things came to mind about that. Firstly, like MPA, which is my thing, non-personal awareness. We often look through the lens of the system, as in what is the family system, what is the energetic system, and that the things that show up tend to be systematic of the system. Because then it's kind of got a holistic view. So I think about parents who maybe are hearing this or being told about this and end up coming to listen to this. And I'm imagining a lot of them feel a great sense of, or a mixture of urgency, guilt, failure, and those kind of things, because there's this sort of, either it's the child's fault or it's the parent's fault, is the kind of standard, in my view, shitty view of how these things work.
Yeah.
Whereas I tend to look at it as like what you're speaking to is like it's looking at both parts of the equation, and each part needs different forms of education. So the family system, can work smoothly because that supports everybody. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense, yeah. And it's less personal. Like it's not a personal thing about either person. It's what I hear you say is it's the family system that isn't functioning to the degree it could. It's not operating well yet, and there's different parts like the parent and the child, and we can help both, and then the whole system will Is that what you're saying? I think
Yeah, the whole
that's the
system will
message I
function
hear.
better from an
Yeah,
energetic perspective. It's like the system
yeah.
will work nicely together, but it has that sort of non-blame, because I would imagine that a lot of people are almost afraid to reach out for help because they hear from society that either it's the parent's fault or it's the child's fault. If it's a child's fault, they can just divorce responsibility and then
Yeah,
send the child off, as we've talked about. And if it's their fault, then that's really tough to take.
yeah,
But you take the fault out of the equation, and again, I love the way you say it, and just say the fact that somebody reaches out um, is in well, again, it can be desperation will drive us to overcome our pride or
yes, it
our
would.
sense
Yeah,
of fear of looking bad in somebody's eyes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you work? I know that before you came on, we talked about you've actually got an event coming up,
Hmm.
because I think there's a way that you through an event get people started and help them out. That's the Calm
Yes,
Child, right?
yes.
Is that where you main? I want you to talk about it, but is that where you mainly start, or is there a different path that it normally works? Is that like, if you want to
Um,
get going, here's a really good way to start?
yeah, that would be the starting point. Sometimes, which I understand, some parents, so we're all different, right? Like some parents want to work with me privately and they don't want to attend a group workshop. They want really private, intense help, um, which would include me doing an evaluation with them and, like total hands-on support. I've had a lot of parents reach out just this month actually for that. But in the Calm Child workshop, that's me saying, let me get a group of you together. So, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about group work.
Mm.
Like, like you get a group of parents together who are all struggling in some way. For me, what I see happen in my group work, because I also have another group coaching where I speak to parents on a weekly basis, what I see happen is parents suddenly realize it isn't just me. I'm not alone. It's not just me that's struggling. Because when we look out onto social media, everyone's great at showing the best bits. Not really many people say, do you know what? Like, I just had a really crappy night last night. Like, this happened with my child. So you get a group together and you suddenly look around the virtual room and you realize it isn't just me. And it's not that we're all just going to sit here and talk about our problems. It's actually, let's realize we're not alone in this, and now together let's learn something that's going to move us forwards and empower us and create change. So to answer your question, in September the Calm Child workshop is happening. That tends to be where parents come and they start to learn with me, like the first step where they start to learn the importance of changing their child's inner dialogue, and how the inner dialogue is creating a lot of the emotional problems or physical symptoms that a child has, how that is creating that, and how a parent can do something about it. And the parent also gets to learn like a starting point of how to change their own inner dialogue as well
Mm.
about the child. So yeah, that is the starting point. Like I say, some parents want in-depth help straight away, which is fine, but many parents are happy to come to a group workshop where they get to learn all of this, but just with other parents, and they get to do it within 3 hours with me. It's all recorded. A lot of the parents that I work with are in a completely different time zone to me, so they can't get there live. So for that reason, I do make sure that when parents register, that it is always recorded, also so that they can show their partner or the child or the parent if they're willing to learn as well. It really is handy to have a recording to share with those people, so you're all on the same page.
That's amazing. I think it's one of the amazing things about group work, in this particular case, especially because, as we talked about, on your own as a parent, or even with your partner, you can feel like such a failure, and like everyone else, as I say, look at social media,
Everyone's
everyone
doing
else is like the
great.
perfect mum. Even meeting for coffee, it's like there's some talk, but we tend to do that in our minds of interpreting as, oh yes, I'm shit and they're all better than me. And when you're willing to sort of to say overcome that fear of being seen, or failure, or pride, or whatever it is, it's an amazing gift, because then people open up, and you sort of, what you do is you meet that human need. We're mammals, man. It's like we need others of our kind to sort of feel less alone, and those things. So I imagine it's an amazing breakthrough moment for parents that actually go, do you know what, I'm going to sign up for Jen's Calm Child and get my foot on the ladder. So they'll learn great tools, but also have a sense of just not being so alone. I imagine that people connect through that as well for other parents that are going through things. Is that what you've experienced?
Do you mean parents connect with each other?
Yeah,
Absolutely. I not so much in the 3-hour workshop, because that's I think another good point to make here is that I do say to leave your camera off or on. Like, this is, for some parents, this might be, I don't really want to be putting my camera on, but I'll dip my toe in and put myself in a group, but I can sort of remain anonymous as well. So it's a really great way of like a first step into
love it.
this. But once parents start to take another step and come to work with me in my ongoing group program, the Calm Child Academy, I do see parents all the time writing little comments to each other saying, yeah, I'm home. You know, for instance, I saw a parent a couple of weeks ago say, I'm homeschooler as well, because one parent was struggling with homeschooling. You know, if you ever want to contact me outside this group, feel free to drop me a message. So I think when parents are in contact on a weekly basis in a group, you start to feel like bonded with people, like close to them, and you've never met them before. So yeah, I've definitely seen parents offer support to other parents, even when they're struggling themselves.
Super powerful. So Calm Child is the best place to start. Come have that.
Yes.
I love that you say you can like video on, video off,
yeah,
your toe in. That kind of respects the humanity of it, right? But then they have an option to go into some sort of ongoing group coaching with you, which is where they'll get that support. Fantastic, really, really good. So I think if people want to find that, it's the calmchild.live, isn't it, to go there?
That's it. Yeah,
I will put the link in the show notes. And I imagine you'll then let them know about the Calm Child Academy, which is your ongoing group.
Yeah.
But they can come meet you, work with you, get some great tools, and have that group experience with the Calm Child. Absolutely. Now, you say it's happening in September, so this is going out in the end of August.
So not long then.
Not long. So if you're hearing this, if you're in a position where you're going, yep, I recognize I'm in exactly the position that Jen's talking about, get your ass to the Calm Child Live now. Check it out. If it resonates, join in. Just give it a go. It's, as Jen says, dip your toe in. However, you might be listening to this in the future. Hello, future person.
Hello.
Is this something that you run sort of on an ongoing basis, or a few times a year? How does that work?
Yeah, so I run it a couple of times a year, coming to the live class. So if you are listening to this in the present moment, get yourself to the live class, because there you will get an opportunity to ask me personal questions about your child. So you're going to get a lot from being there live. Having said that, if you listen to this, I don't know, in February 2023, for example, after we've recorded this, I probably won't be running this again now until spring next year. I don't have an exact date, but it's going to be a good another 6 months, or however many months, 6 to 8 more months.
Yeah.
So sometimes I offer the recording to parents. So in the future, you might find on my website, if you go to www.thecalmchild.live, you might find that I'm offering you the recording there that you can purchase and get at home. So I've got you covered, whether you're in the present or the future. You don't
awesome,
have to,
so you can't beat live experience in terms of that, but you can get a lot from a recording. So if you're listening to it now, a good chance to get it. Don't leave it till spring, get the changes in now.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So before we wrap this up, because we've gone through the time pretty quickly here, it's been amazing.
No, I could talk all day about, not all day, but I'd be tired if I talked all day. But it's just been a really, really, interesting conversation.
So what's your kind of, if you wanted to leave my audience with like the one thing that you want them to take away from what you've offered here today, what would that be? Maybe it's something you haven't mentioned yet, or maybe it's something that we've talked about.
I think it's the piece around, don't think that you're bad or that you failed or that you've done something wrong. Don't buy into that, and don't allow that thought to fester and keep you stuck in the dark at home, basically. Come forward, ask for help. I am the least judgmental person. I've made plenty of my own mistakes in life, and this is not about this is nothing about your self-worth. This is just, you've not been given the information that you needed as a child yourself when you were growing up, and then when you chose to have children, you just didn't have this understanding. There's nothing to feel bad about. Don't allow that to stop you getting the help that your family desperately needs.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can vouch for that with Jen. She's such a wonderfully authentic, but it's like, here I am, this is me, Jen. I love that about you. And your general website, where people can go, is the highlyensitivechild.co.uk, which I'll also put that up as well to get in touch with you. As you say, people might want to do some one-to-one sessions, just reach out. And I literally did watch that video with you with your glasses on before we started. It just really, everybody, you've got to see that video. Go to the highlyensitivechild.co.uk. It's right at the top of the homepage there. There's a picture of Jem with these big blue glasses on. It's a must watch. It's brilliant. So go, at the very least, go and watch that and have a look around. She's also got some great videos. We didn't get to talk about it, but you might have to come back about. There's one I saw called Repair with Your Child. I'm a big fan of Repair, so we're going to put that as a bookmark for next time you come on, talk about repair, because that's amazing for adults and for kids as well. So it's a great topic. Otherwise,
and I'm
Jen,
on Instagram. So if any of your followers are on Instagram, I spend a lot of time on Instagram at the Highly Sensitive Child there as well. So it's another place that I have a whole library of videos that you can binge watch and just learn so much about all of this stuff there as well.
Yeah, you're big on it. Is it the Highly Sensitive Child, one word?
Yes.
No underscores or anything like that. Okay.
No,
I'll put that in the show notes as well. I'll do it as the handle, and I'll link it through if you want to click through to Instagram. But I know you're big on Instagram. So if you're an Instagrammer, even if you're not, only a mild Instagram, go check out Jen on Instagram as well. And I imagine you're on Facebook too, so they can come find you there.
Not so much on Facebook. I spend most of my time on Instagram. But I'm on Facebook as well.
Jen on the gram and Facebook. All right, I'll stick those links all in the show notes.
Awesome.
Jen, it's been fantastic to spend this time chatting with you. We'll have to get you on again and talk about wider areas of topic. Everybody, Jen's awesome. Go check out The Calm Child coming up in September. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this show, I'd love you to do me a solid and tell someone about it. They can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and most other podcast platforms. Plus, if you visit the website www.babrillianthuman.com, you can share the show notes to social media and make my day. Also, make sure you hit that follow button, and if you haven't yet downloaded the MPA process sheet, head on over to joelyoungmpa.com and get your free copy today. Big love, and see you next time.